Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video we're talking about Federalist number 51, so let's get right to it. In this video we're going to talk about the second of the required Federalist papers, and that is Federalist number 51. This paper is about one main topic, and that is separation of powers and checks and balances. In this one, there's no mystery what it's about. Right from the beginning, Madison gets right to the point. He's talking about separation of powers. He's asking, how can we maintain the necessary partition or separation of power among the several departments, or we would call them branches more commonly, as laid down in the Constitution? And his solution is to make sure that each branch, by its relationship to the other two branches, will actually be the means of keeping the others in their proper places. So Madison says we need to give each branch not only the ability, but also the incentive to jealously guard its own power from the other two branches. One of the most famous passages of Federalist 51 is in this section where he says, ambition must be made to counteract ambition. So just like in Brutus number 1, where the author noted that whenever you give a man some power, he's going to want to try to take more power, Madison recognizes the same thing, but Madison realizes this can be useful because each branch will want to increase its own power, but if all three branches want to increase their power, they also want to protect their power from the other two branches. This will ensure that none of the three branches becomes too powerful, which is exactly the goal. Here, James Madison really flexes his understanding of human nature. But this kind of raises the question, why do we need to be so concerned about any one part of the government getting too much power? Well, Madison here comes back to human nature, and he says that it's because of human nature that we need to control the abuses of government. And he asks a rhetorical question, what is government itself but the greatest of all reflections on human nature? If men were angels, no government would be necessary. So let's pause there. If humans were perfect, we wouldn't need a government because people wouldn't do bad things, there wouldn't be violations of people's rights, etc. There'd be no crime, so we wouldn't need a government. Likewise, if angels were governing men, you wouldn't need to worry about separation of powers or checks and balances or governments abusing their power. It wouldn't be necessary because those governing angels would be perfect. However, in the real world, we have men and women governing other men and women. And so he says this is difficult because you first must enable the government to control the governed, but you also must oblige it to control itself. So you need to give the government enough power that it can do its job, that it can protect people's rights, but you also need to make sure that you limit that power so that it can't abuse that power and actually take away people's rights. Speaking of not trusting anybody with too much power, the assumption was that Congress would be the most powerful branch of government. So Madison says, all right, we have to take that power and we have to divide it further. So you see the claim, in a Republican government, the legislative authority necessarily predominates. It will be the strongest branch. So the remedy, the solution to this, is to divide the legislature into different branches. So he is here arguing in favor of a bicameral legislature where we divide Congress's power into the House and into the Senate. Again, intentionally making it more difficult to pass legislation. It's going to be slower, tougher, a more difficult process, but he says that's good because otherwise, if it were too easy to pass laws, Congress could have too much power, and again, individual rights could be in jeopardy. Now, while most of the paper is focused on the federal government and the three branches, James Madison does take a moment to discuss federalism as it relates to this same idea of dividing power and making sure that, again, no one level or institution of government has too much power. So here he describes the compound Republic of America, talking about it being divided between two distinct governments, meaning the state level and the federal level, and then subdividing the federal level into three branches, the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch. So he says, hence a double security arises to the rights of the people. And this portion of Federalist 51 touches on something that was talked about a little bit more at length in Federalist number 10, but again, Madison does here emphasize how checks and balances and separation of powers will protect minority rights from tyranny or oppression by the majority. So he points out that by having governmental power divided and broken into so many parts, he says that the rights of the minority will be in little danger from interested combinations of the majority. So again, there will be so many different competing outlets that it'll make it less likely that the majority will be able to trample the rights of the minority. And towards the very end, there's a sentence here that I like where he tells us the purpose of government. Justice is the ultimate purpose of government, according to Madison. What he writes is, justice is the end of government. It is the end of civil society. And what he means by that is exactly what I said. He means that it's the purpose of government is to achieve justice. So while that isn't a main idea of Federalist 51, it might be useful as some kind of piece of evidence that you could use in the future on an argument essay if it comes up. Alright, so that's it for this one. Until next time, this has been a LaMoney production. Alright, thanks again for watching this video. Please help me out. Hit that like button for me. I really appreciate it. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure that you subscribe. Check out the AP Gov Ultimate Review Packet. The link is in the description below. Check that out. I promise it'll be super helpful as you prepare for this AP exam. I'll see you all in the next video.